Welcome back, and it's time for a newspaper review. And like I told you, we'll have a very interesting guest today, and his name is Minaz Manji. He's the CEO and Group Marketing Director, Twiga Tours. Welcome to our studios today.
Asante Sana, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Pleasure to see you.
Thank you.
Right, and of course we'll have a very special interest in tourism, but of course we'll just go through the papers and inform you of what's happening rather in politics. And just going through our dailies, we'll begin with the people before we get into tourism sector rather. We have storm in ODM as Raila allies call a Babu Jubilee spy. What it says here is disagreements stalking the Orange Democratic Movement elections boiled over during a core retreat as two politicians claim some rebel MPs have been planted to rock party from within the camp after the February. Headline story there. Uhuru Ruto tell MPs to stop embarrassing coalition. Of course, you know that there have been some wrangles within the coalition, and that's what Uhuru and Ruto telling MPs, stop embarrassing this coalition. So I know there's a lot of happening in our political scene, especially right now. You know, court of course had its retreats, and of course is also meeting at State House, Nairobi. That was yesterday, and of course Parliament opens today afternoon after the long Christmas break. What do you think about, everything that's happening within, let's say, ODM party?
Well, for a start, I think it's about time that both parties really got down to work rather than having all these squabbles that they seem to be having. I think it's important for a Kenyan really to see some improvement in their daily lives. I'm not so sure if Kenyans are really interested in what happens within each party. We are going through our own difficulties. We are going through expensive living. We are going through security concerns. I think it's important that they put that behind them and get on with what we elected them to do, and that is to work for the common man.
Right, I get you, right. And of course, for more information on this particular story, check it out on the front page of the People newspaper. It's both, the two headlining stories, that is Tobin ODM and the president and his deputy telling MPs to stop embarrassing the coalition. Well, we move on to the Star newspaper. The front page there, interesting headline there, almost similar to the one in the People newspaper. It says, bitter exchange in front of Raila. I like the way they use the wordings there. And it says, Babu storms out after fight with Kajwang. Now, of course, what it says here, let me see the version they have on page 6. I read for you the version on People newspaper. It says here, party leader Raila Odinga yesterday watched in Naivasha as the leaders of the two ODM factions exchanged bitter words before him. Budalangi MP Babu Namwamba clashed with Otieno Kajwang, who wants to be ODM vice chairman after he had that the ODM delegates will only vote for people who are loyal to the party. Wrangles happening there. Do remember also that ODM will be having their party elections very soon, and all this is happening, and of course former Prime Minister Raila Odinga is also trying to keep the party together and trying to keep the peace in the party. It's very important, especially right now they're gearing up towards the party elections. Well, you can read more stories, rather the Star's version of basically that headline of what's similar as to what's in our People newspaper. Also on the front page, we have Kwale cops attacked, guns stolen. Now, a traffic police officer was yesterday morning seriously injured after along Mombasa Lunga highway with his AK-47 stolen. His colleague escaped with minor injuries. And you also do have Olive sample laptop came from Hayer. Am I saying it correct? Is this word correct? It's something that's H-A-I-E-R. There you go. You can read more of that story in the People newspaper. Yes, still a bit of course, politics there, Minaz, in our Star newspaper here. But of course, like you said, you believe that people, the party leaders, should focus on what Kenyans need right now. Their politics should be attributed to what's currently happening in the nation. Like you said, inflation is up, the cost of living and all that. So.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't recall voting for the parties to engage in squabbles. I recall voting for a good leader who will has a vision for us and continues to work for us. I mean, and that's what it's all about. I think the common man is really tired of all of reading all these squabbles amongst themselves. I think it's time to get down to business. 1 year later, we need to see results.
But don't you think the saying that goes, when you're completely out of it and when you don't pay attention to what's happening, especially in the political scene, where most of what happens there can actually, let me not say it can actually bases a lot on what's happening in the nation, that you'll have no knowledge and make the same mistakes, especially when it comes to election period, for example?
If we look at the developed world, I don't think that they engage in this kind of squabbles on the front page of a newspaper. I think it's important that we get to understand what the politicians are doing, but it should be more focused towards what is good for the country rather than what is good for themselves. And that's what I'm trying to say, that, it's fine to be told, what is going on in the political world, but the more important thing is that they should be focused towards working for the common man and the country. That is the vision they should be having, not a vision to enrich themselves or put themselves in positions of influence. I think that it's important that they just got down to business. I mean, 1 year has gone by, or almost has gone by. That's 4 more to go. And before we open our eyes, it'll be gone.
Exactly, and you'll be faced with the same decisions we had the last time onwards, so we need to make those very wise decisions, but also, have more knowledge on what's happening in our world today. I think that will also, enhance people in making the correct decisions, right? Now, moving on, the Daily Nation, quickly, we'll take a look at the headline story there. It says, Tobacco orders arrest of central bank boss. It says, prosecution boss gives a green light for action against Ndungu for alleged abuse of office arising from tenders shenanigans in the purchase of software in which the Anti-Corruption Authority claims the public stands to lose 400 million shillings in inflated costs. Right, that's a very interesting story there. What they're also saying there is what it will cost to install security equipment at the Central Bank of Kenya. The award of the tender has put the central bank boss on the spot. We're looking at 1.2 billion shillings here. That is what it will cost to install security equipment at the Central Bank of Kenya. And also, it says the investigations, the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission had asked Mr. Keriako Tobacco to order arrest for Professor Njuguna Ndungu after investigations showed that the governor had failed to appeal the award of the security software tender despite being asked to do so by the central bank lawyer, Mr. Fred Ngatia. We have a picture there of Mr. Keriako Tobacco there. We can read more on that story. That is on page 4. Also, we have Kick Out Paul's team. It's a very small picture there. There you go. There you go. That's Mr. Keriako Tobacco there. Yeah, and his sentiments. Yes, close to his picture. Yeah, there you go. Now, also on the front page of the Daily Nation, we have Kick Out Paul's team. Raila tells court MPs. More stories there. Of course, more elaboration. Each daily with its, of course, version of events of what's happening in the court coalition there. But you can also read the Daily Nation to get more information on that story. And moving on now, move on to the Standard newspaper. We have claims of Jubilee Malls rock Raila party talks. They say here that an easy Naivasha court leaders retreat over claims Uhuru Ruto party had planted spies in Orange Group. Very similar to the Star, the People, and of course, this is recently what I've read on the Daily Nation. More information rather. And the similar information written in a different way in each daily, and of course this is the Standard's version. And also on the front page we have as Uhuru team turns on envoys. It says here the storm stirred by former International Criminal Court ICC prosecutor Luis Moreno Ocampo confession that he was pressured by diplomats during his Kenyan probe featured in a Jubilee leaders meeting at State House in Nairobi. Of course, you also highlighted this on news this morning, and get more information there on the Standard. And finally, moving on, the Business Daily. We have court quashes Uhuru's bid to oust Portland chairman. It says here Mark Ole Kabolo scores a quick win against the state in battle for control of cement firm's board of directors. front page story there on the Business Daily. And also CBK governor faces charges of a security tender award. Also highlighted there on, I believe it was the Daily Nation. Yes, you can read more on that story there on the Business Daily. Right, stay on your screens. Of course, and now it's time to engage our guest. As well, we have a special guest today, and let me just get his name right again. Minaz Manju, CEO and Group Marketing Director, and we're talking about tourism today. First of all, I want to tell you congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Your company won an award. You can tell us about that.
Actually, we won 2 awards. We won the award for Kenya's leading inbound tour company. And Africa's responsible tourism company.
The
award was more, I think, for personally for me, it was more important because we were up against some of the top brand names of in Africa,
Right.
who practice responsible tourism ethics, and to be able to stand up to them and actually beat them was an accolade in itself. So, I'm very, very proud that we were able to win such an award for Africa and especially for Kenya, because Kenya has been the leading nation in conservation. We've come out with very, very innovative ideas since the 60s, 70s and 80s, and we've done extremely well in trying to conserve our heritage for our future generations.
Most definitely.
So, to be able to stand up to these big names around the continent.
Well, that's a big achievement.
I think so. I think so.
Okay. Now, our tourism industry has been rocked, especially last year by a lot. A lot has been happening. We're talking about security, but before we even get to that, let's talk about the 300 fee charge. And maybe if our audience have no idea of what I'm talking about, the placards that you write the name of your loved one or the person you're waiting for at the airport, and you're standing like this, with the name right across, you have to pay 300 shillings for that.
Yes,
how did that even come about?
I have no idea, actually. Whoever thought of it was quite ingenious, I must say. That you come up with this idea to try and fleece the public. But if it is true, and to be very honest, I have seen a letter to that effect. There is not much clarity in it right now. What it's saying is that all paging services. Now, what exactly do we mean by paging services? If it means holding up that placard and standing outside the international and domestic arrivals, and you're trying to identify the person you're waiting for, then I think it's rather silly. The arriving passenger.
But Minaz, I want to understand what's behind it exactly. Why would they recommend someone to pay 300 shillings? Is it a security concern? Is it the space where you're standing to? I'm trying to understand the whole notion actually behind it better.
So am I, actually, to be very honest. I can't see the logic here. It's quite hilarious when you look at it from one point of view, but it's quite serious that we Kenyans find all sorts of ways to try and earn some money. But I think this is going beyond any ethical business way of making or earning revenue for the KAA. How do you ask anyone who is going to hold up a placard to pay 300 shillings every time you're meeting your visitor? But the important thing here is that you are required to go to the security office to endorse that. So if I were holding up a Twiga Tours board with your name on it, what is the security concern? I quite don't get it.
Right. I also need to read out that that letter to effect to understand better exactly the notion behind it. Like you said, even if you try to wrap your hand around it, it still really doesn't come into play. But that being said, let's take a look at security. Like I mentioned much earlier, the tourism sector has been rocked with a lot, especially last year. The unfortunate Westgate incident that happened, JKIA fire, so how are we trying, how is the sector trying to come up again after all that happening?
Sadly, we seem to be up against very many challenges. Our perception, the perception of Kenya as a destination of choice is under serious threat. We are suffering difficult times because when you speak to anybody, even a visitor who has arrived in Kenya, they are extremely concerned about whether they will return home safely. And you have to reassure them.
Yes.
And I'll give you a very good example. I had a group of 50 doctors from North America.
Yes.
And soon after the Westgate incident, they wanted to cancel. I had to fly to Toronto and New York to try and ensure that, I was able to convince them. And one of the things that I suggested was that I'm obviously concerned about my own security. So I would escort the group and go on a 10-day safari. Seriously, I didn't have to, but I did it because the important thing was to save the group, the visitors, from coming here to Kenya and seeing the beauty of this country. But sadly, the perception in the Western world or in our source markets isn't that positive. So, we continue to battle these kind of challenges. It's a challenge that we can do without. I don't think that we give a very good image when a visitor or anyone, even our own residents, when you walk into a mall and you are searched, you try to board a matatu, you are searched, you want to walk into a restaurant, you are searched. In my opinion, I don't think we are doing justice to anybody out there who wants to choose Kenya as a destination. So, already we have an uphill task. It's important that we address and put our house in order.
So how else then would we go about it? I mean, yes, we do know that there would be better ways of them doing it. Actually, we'll look at that security aspect of the whole searching, thing, of course, in a few minutes. But how would you prefer them best to do it?
I'm not a security expert, so it's very difficult for me to say how.
Just your views.
But the thing is that the message we are sending out isn't helping the tourism industry for a start. And from a tourism point of view, I think it's important that the government takes this role seriously and ensures that our borders, first of all, are secure. It is unthinkable if, for example, if you went in the Western world, let's just take London, for example, because it's the most popular destination for people who go from here. I guess many of them go to London, or Dubai, for example. Are you searched every time you walk into a mall? Are you searched every time you board a train? If they did that, there would be chaos, because there would be millions of people queuing up to get in. So how do they manage it? We need to learn from them. We need to understand. And of course, our security apparatus has to be extremely, extremely vigilant. That is their role. Yes, the common man, the citizen, must play their role too. You cannot expect somebody else to do it for you. But I think that when we have to take the role of a policeman, I think that is going a bit too far.
Right. I understand what you're saying, especially on the way it would look to outside visitors who are coming in. I get it from now your angle. But of course, it's also the angle of, the security experts would say, or rather, let me say, people who are looking at the scene of what's happening when it comes to the grounds of security, that even the whole searching, that is not really done to the core. Because sometimes, the security guys may just see you and, just pass through the bar, I believe. I'm not sure exactly what it's called. And then you go through. Or maybe I look at you, don't look so suspicious, Minaz, and I'm thinking, or you just, carry on. So the thing is, I think, like you said, we need to find ways which are very effective. I'm not saying that our security personnel are not doing anything, no. We commend them for the job they're doing. The people who are sweating, working day and night to ensure that, we are safe, we're okay. But when it comes to tourism, like the way you've mentioned, I believe that we can do more, especially in getting tourists to feel comfortable. Maybe some of them would actually appreciate the security in the country, but well, that being said, what other challenges do you believe are rocking the tourism sector that we need to look at very keenly, as security is one of the major factors there?
I always like to start this such a discussion by saying, first and foremost, Kenya has one of the most warm, friendly and hospitable people.
Yes, that is very true.
We are an amazing people. We really bend over backwards. We really go out of line of duty to make our visitors feel safe. We make them feel happy. We will do anything to make sure that our visitors here are comfortable. Now that is a big asset that we have. But when we look at on the other side, that's where our problem starts. Security, as I said, we need to also be competitive. Now, unfortunately, as much as the government had the right intentions, of course the government needs money to be able to develop our infrastructure, because that's also another line that the tourism industry has been complaining about.
Exactly.
We need modern facilities, we need good roads, the infrastructure has to be in place. Now, in order to get all that, obviously the government has to find money from somewhere. But I just think that slapping off the VAT was probably ill-timed. It came in when already this destination is very expensive. We are losing our competitiveness against other competitors. If you were to look at our next door neighbors, for example, they withdrew, or if I can use the word revoked, the VAT that Kenya went on to install. So they are now more competitive than we are. 16% is quite a lot of money. Now, when you add it to the already expensive park fees of say $80, it now brings your price to 90.
Yeah.
So that's quite expensive. And if you look at South Africa, for example, and you buy goods in South Africa, they actually refund your VAT. And I was just in Tanzania the other day, and one of my guests bought Tanzanite. They got their VAT back. So we need to come out with this kind of incentives for our visitors to come here, spend their money, but it has to be a competitive destination. There are many destinations of similar.
So thing is, yes, we hail our tourism industry, but we don't invest as much as we need to, and we don't have such a competitive spirit to that effect.
Unfortunately, not.
What does it mean? Is it that we're too, being warm-hearted is awesome. Because you'll hear many people around the world saying, Kenyans, I've heard even from some of my friends abroad, they'll tell, you guys, I love your country, you're warm, you're loving, I would love to come there. But is it that we're too much on that side, that we don't understand the business angle to it? Or what exactly?
I think we are not getting our business mix properly. I think what we fail to understand is that there are competitors coming up, and it's not the 80s scenario where soon after the release of the blockbuster movie Out of Africa, everybody wanted to come to Kenya, and it was a boom time. And I think that now, 30 years down the road, there are many other competitors on the African continent who have similar product. Yes, Kenya has a much better product. We are a very diversified product, but those countries, of course, have other heritage that we probably may not have, and as a result, they are also proving to be, formidable competitors. Now, in that line, we need to then be able to understand what is the mix or the trend of business. What exactly do we need? Today, the business is changing. The tourism business is changing. I remember the 60s and the 70s. It was, the very elderly who traveled. Today, it's families. Now, what are we doing for these families? How do we attract them? How do you attract a 5-6-year-old boy and keep that 5-6-year-old boy busy for 8 hours on a road?
Exactly. That's interesting.
It's difficult.
That's interesting.
So we need to be able to understand the changing trend. We also need to be competitive against our competitors and be able to mix our business to what the demand is, rather than just assuming that we are a wonderful destination because we've got warm, wonderful, hospitable people, we've got the wildlife, we've got the beach, that's it, everybody's going to come here. Unfortunately, that's not how people look at it.
I used to hear some people saying this particular thing, that we are stuck a bit in the past, especially when it comes to the way we operate our businesses, especially when trends are changing, but we are looking at it like from the 1980s perspective or the 1990s perspective, and realizing that in the 21st century we need to do business the 21st century way, with 21st century technology, and with the 21st century look. so that we are not left behind in the sense where we are in a comfort zone, and we are saying, tourism will always bring in money for Kenya. I mean, you have beautiful wildlife. Speaking of wildlife, before we even get that point, Minaz, I had an issue with an issue being spoken about with the wildebeest migration.
Yes.
How is that going? How is that going?
I think I know.
You can elaborate more.
Yes, I think I know what you're referring to. I mean, I think you're referring to this newspaper reports we had in July and August, where
last year.
Yes, where guests misbehaved in the game parks. I've had some very embarrassing stories that have come through my computer. Emails, stories written by visitors where you see the photograph of people who sit on top of their cars, standing outside, near the Mara River, for example, whilst the wildebeest want to make a crossing and they are unable to do so. Now, we need to also be able to control the movement of people. I think we are also forgetting that we are a nature-based industry. Whether you look at the coastal industry or the wildlife parks, it's nature. If you have nature, that means that if you have lots of feet running around it, obviously you're going to damage it.
Exactly.
You see? So what exactly were these people doing? Obviously they were harassing the animals from doing what they are used to doing, from crossing the river and back and forth. That's what we were doing. So when you hear of such stories, obviously as a Kenyan, we are very deeply embarrassed that people are allowed to do these kind of things, no action is taken, and of course there are all sorts of people who are responsible for it.
Are there stringent rules to that effect, that will make sure that people will not behave in that way? I mean, it's also dangerous to themselves. It's putting your own life in danger when you do stuff like that.
The question is, who is there to enforce the rules? We have the rules. I mean, if I were to show you the story that I have come across, the visitor actually says that at Olololo Gate he was given a guideline of the rules that he was meant to follow.
Okay.
But in spite of all that, this gentleman saw everybody else out of his vehicle, on top of the roof, etc., etc. So who was there to enforce it? Now that's where the issue is. Is it corruption? Were those rangers colluding with certain people and allowing this thing to happen? Well, that's, something else. If that was the case, then unfortunately we should ensure that that is stopped. But yes, we need to not just be seen to be doing things, we must enforce certain rules.
It's like, they put somewhere on the gate, you give them the rules before you enter, the game, rather the area, and no one comes into effect to make sure that those laws are upheld.
Well,
is that the issue?
For a start, I cannot understand how so many vehicles could have converged at the Mara River and there were no rangers in sight. And if there were, exactly what were they doing? So these are the questions we need to ask. If the rangers were there, what were they doing? And if they were not there, then why?
Okay.
You see, but the thing is that the industry itself has to also overhaul itself. We need to overhaul the industry and be able to do things that is acceptable. I mean, there have been arguments that we have so many vehicles, there's so many people that come and visit, say for example, our most important and famous park, the Masai Mara. Yes, and of course we want to earn reasonable revenue out of tourism, but that doesn't mean that, we overdo it. Now, if you look at the Masai Mara today, 1/10 the size of Serengeti, but I think we have 3 or 4 times as many lodges, or probably even more, I'm not even sure, but as many lodges as you can in and around the park. I mean, it's unbelievable, and they are unchecked, Now, when you also look at the quality, some of those properties simply are 1 star, maybe half a star, that's basic, but they still promote themselves as luxury. So what exactly is luxury when you tell a visitor abroad and they look at the internet and they tell you a cheap property is still luxury? So, we need to have certain controls in place. Now, we for a very long time...
Actually, to check all that's happening, of course.
There's no star rating anywhere.
Right.
So, how do you say my property is, or you know, property A is 5 stars and property B is 1 star. There is nobody to regulate that.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much, Minaz. Because of time, we may have to, actually, no, we have to end there.
Thank you.
But thank you for coming in, and congratulations once again for that award. I wish you the best.
Thank you.
And also, like you said, next time when you come through, we'll of course discuss about what needs to be done, you know, and of course the successes of the tourism industry, and now that we need to just switch them over to the 21st century way of, you know, doing things, rather, if I may say.
Asante sana.
Thank you
very
so much.
Thank
right.
you again.
Thank you. Right. Well, that has been our guest, Minaz Manji. He is the CEO and Group Marketing Director, Twiga Tour. Thank you so much for watching. We'll be back with the social hour, and we have our flashback for today. It's by Jamani. Take a look.